Lyle was 8 years old when he told his cousin Diane, "Dad keeps touching me." She was 17. She believed him, and she told Kitty. Kitty's response: "What happens in this family stays in this family." Erik told his cousin Andy for years, "It's still happening. I'm scared." Andy kept the secret until Erik was arrested. 35 years later, these two cousins are the only people alive who can say, "We knew. Before the murders, before the trial, we knew the abuse was real." Their testimony could have changed everything, but did anyone believe them? And why did they wait so long to speak? 1977. Lyle Menendez was 8 years old. His cousin Diane VanderMolen was 17. The Menendez family was visiting Diane's family in Illinois. It was a normal family visit: barbecues, swimming, kids playing, but Diane noticed something about Lyle. He was withdrawn, anxious. He didn't want to be alone with Jose. One afternoon, Diane found Lyle sitting by himself. He looked upset. The conversation that would become crucial testimony 16 years later. Diane: "Lyle, what's wrong? You seem sad." Lyle, 8 years old: "I don't want to go home." Diane: "Why not?" Lyle hesitated. Then: "Dad keeps touching me in places he shouldn't, and I don't like it." Diane froze. She was 17. She didn't know what to say, but she knew this was serious. Diane: "Lyle, that's not okay. Does your mom know?" Lyle: "I think so, but she doesn't stop it." She immediately told her mother, Kitty's sister. Her mother was shocked. "We have to tell Kitty." They confronted Kitty that same day. Kitty's response: according to Diane's testimony, Kitty became defensive, angry. "Lyle is exaggerating. He doesn't understand what he's saying. This is a family matter. What happens in this family stays in this family." She dismissed it completely. Diane's mother pushed: "Kitty, if Jose is doing something inappropriate." Kitty cut her off. "Jose would never do anything to hurt his sons. This conversation is over." What happened after? The Menendez family left Illinois. Diane never saw Lyle talk about it again. Over the years, she would see the family at holidays and gatherings. Lyle seemed fine, normal, happy even. She wondered if maybe Kitty had been right. Maybe Lyle had misunderstood something. Or maybe Lyle had learned to hide it. For 12 years, Diane VanderMolen carried that conversation with her. She thought about it sometimes, wondered if she should have done more, but she was a teenager when it happened. What could she have done? August 1989. Diane heard the news. Jose and Kitty Menendez had been murdered. She was shocked, horrified. Then she heard Lyle and Erik were arrested. And suddenly that conversation from 1977 came flooding back. The realization. Diane thought, what if Lyle was telling the truth? What if the abuse never stopped? What if that's why they did it? But she didn't come forward. Not yet. She was scared. This was her family. Kitty was her aunt. Lyle was her cousin. 1993. The trial begins. When the trial started and the abuse allegations became public, Diane knew she had to speak. The defense contacted her. Leslie Abramson asked if she'd testify. Diane agreed. October 1993. Diane VanderMolen took the witness stand. She was now 33 years old, a mother herself. She had spent 16 years thinking about that conversation. Leslie Abramson's questions. Leslie: "Miss VanderMolen, can you tell the jury about a conversation you had with Lyle when he was 8 years old?" Diane took a deep breath. "Diane, Lyle told me his father was touching him sexually. He said he didn't like it and didn't want to go home." The courtroom went silent. Leslie: "What did you do with that information?" Diane: "I told my mother immediately. We told Kitty." Leslie: "What was Kitty's response?" Diane: "She said it was a family matter. She said what happens in the family stays in the family. She told us to drop it." Leslie: "Did you ever see Lyle again after that conversation?" Diane: "Yes, at family gatherings over the years." Leslie: "Did he ever bring it up again?" Diane: "No, never." The impact. This testimony was explosive. It corroborated Lyle's claims. It showed that Lyle had disclosed abuse as a child. An adult witness had heard it. Kitty had been told and dismissed it. The family had a pattern of silence. The cross-examination. Pamela Bozanich tried to undermine Diane's testimony. "Pamela, Miss VanderMolen, you waited 16 years to tell anyone outside your immediate family about this conversation." Diane: "Yes." Pamela: "Why?" Diane: "I didn't think anyone would believe me, and it was family. I was conflicted." Pamela: "Did you ever see Jose Menendez abuse Lyle?" Diane: "No." Pamela: "So you only have an 8-year-old child's word from 1977? Diane: "Yes. But I believed him then, and I believe him now." But Diane wasn't the only cousin who knew. Erik had been telling someone for years, and what that cousin kept hidden would become the most controversial evidence in the entire case. Andy Cano was Erik's cousin. They were close in age, best friends growing up. Erik trusted Andy more than anyone, and for years, Erik told Andy what was happening. The conversations, starting around 1986 when Erik was 15, not all at once, gradually, in pieces. Erik would say things like, "My dad is really hard on me. He does things to me I don't want to talk about. I'm scared of him." Andy didn't push, he just listened. By 1988, Erik was more explicit. According to Andy's later testimony, Erik told him, the abuse was ongoing. It was sexual in nature. He felt trapped. He didn't know how to make it stop. The letter, in December 1988, 8 months before the murders, Erik wrote a letter to Andy. The letter said, "I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy. I never know when it's going to happen. And it's worse now. I can't take it anymore. I know I've talked to you about this before, but it's worse, I'm afraid." Andy received the letter. He read it. He kept it. But he didn't tell anyone. Erik had sworn him to secrecy. August 1989. When Erik was arrested for murder, Andy was devastated. He thought, this is why. This is what pushed him over the edge. But he still didn't come forward. Why not? Andy later explained, "I was scared. This was my family. Erik was my best friend. I didn't want to betray him by sharing something he told me in confidence." 1993. As the trial approached, Andy struggled. He had evidence. Real evidence. A letter written before the murders that mentioned ongoing abuse. But he was terrified to testify. Finally, the defense convinced him. He agreed to take the stand. November 1993. Andy Cano, now in his 20s, took the witness stand. He was nervous, shaking. This was his cousin, his best friend. Leslie Abramson's questions. Leslie, "Mr. Cano, did Erik ever tell you about problems at home?" Andy, "Yes, for years. He told me his father was abusing him." Leslie, "Can you be more specific?" Andy, "He said his father was doing sexual things to him. He said he was scared and didn't know how to stop it." Leslie, "Did he ever mention this in writing?" Andy, "Yes. He wrote me a letter in December 1988. Leslie, "Do you have that letter?" Andy, "Yes." The letter was entered into evidence. The jury read Erik's words from 8 months before the murders. "It's still happening. I'm afraid." The impact. This was potentially the most important piece of evidence in the entire trial. Why? Because it proved the abuse allegations existed before the murders. Erik wasn't making this up after being arrested. He'd been telling Andy for years. He'd written about it before anyone died. This was corroboration. Real, time-stamped corroboration. The prosecution's response. But Pamela Bozanich attacked the letter's credibility. "Pamela, Mr. Cano, you kept this letter for 5 years?" Andy, "Yes." "Pamela, and you never showed it to anyone until now?" Andy, "No." "Pamela, you're telling this jury that you had evidence of child abuse, and you did nothing?" Andy, "I didn't know what to do. Erik made me promise not to tell." "Pamela, so you valued your promise to Erik over his safety?" Andy couldn't answer. He started crying. "Pamela, Mr. Cano, isn't it possible Erik wrote this letter after the murders and gave it to you, asking you to say it was from 1988? Andy, "No, that's not what happened." Pamela, "But it's possible?" Andy, "No. I received this in December 1988. I know I did." The problem? There was no way to definitively prove when the letter was written. No postmark. It had been hand-delivered. No date stamp. Just Andy's word that he received it 8 months before the murders. Some jurors believed him. Some thought he was lying to protect his cousin. But Andy's testimony would haunt him in ways he never expected. Because what happened to him after the trial is one of the most tragic parts of this entire story. Andy Cano testified in November 1993. His testimony was powerful but controversial. After the trial, his life fell apart. The immediate aftermath. Andy received death threats. People called him a liar, an accomplice, a betrayer. Online forums, early internet, called him the cousin who helped murderers go free. His family was divided. Some supported him. Others blamed him. "Why didn't you tell someone before they killed Jose and Kitty?" family members asked. Andy had no good answer. The guilt. Andy developed severe depression. He blamed himself for not preventing the murders. "If I had told someone about the abuse, maybe Jose and Kitty would still be alive," he told friends. But he also believed Erik. He didn't think Erik was lying about the abuse. He was caught between two impossible feelings. Guilt for not preventing the murders. Loyalty to a cousin he believed was abused. The addiction? Andy started using drugs. First marijuana, then harder substances. By the late 1990s, he was addicted to methamphetamine. Friends tried to help. He went to rehab multiple times. Nothing stuck. The final years. Andy's life spiraled. He lost jobs, lost relationships, lost hope. In 2003, 10 years after testifying, Andy Cano died. The cause of death. Andy's mother later revealed he died from a drug overdose. It was ruled accidental, but friends suspected it was intentional. Andy was 29 years old. His final words to a friend, weeks before he died: "I tried to help Erik. I thought telling the truth would set him free. Instead, it destroyed my life, and Erik is still in prison." What was the point? Diane VanderMolen's life took a different path, but it was also difficult. The family division. Half of Kitty's family believed Diane. Half thought she was lying or misremembering. Diane's uncle, Milton Anderson, Kitty's brother, was furious with her. "You destroyed my sister's reputation," he told her. "You made her look like a monster who enabled abuse. Kitty can't defend herself." Diane responded, "I told the truth. What Kitty did or didn't do, that's on her, not me." The family fractured. Reunions became tense. Some relatives stopped speaking to Diane entirely. The public reaction. Unlike Andy, Diane didn't receive death threats, but she was criticized. "Why didn't you report it to authorities in 1977? Diane's response: "I was 17 years old. I told the adults in my life. What else could I have done?" Her perspective now. In interviews over the years, Diane has been consistent. "I believe Lyle. I believed him in 1977, and I believe him now. What I regret is not doing more. But I was a teenager. I told the adults. They dismissed it. That's on them." She supports Lyle and Erik's release. She has written letters to the parole board on their behalf. She remains convinced the abuse was real. But here's the question that haunts both families. If Diane had pushed harder in 1977, if Andy had spoken up earlier, could all of this have been prevented? What if Diane had called the police in 1977? Child Protective Services might have investigated. Maybe they would have found evidence. Maybe they would have removed Lyle and Erik from the home. Or maybe they would have found nothing. Jose was powerful, wealthy, respected. Would authorities have believed an 8-year-old over a successful executive? Probably not. Not in 1977. What if Andy had told someone in 1988? Andy received Erik's letter 8 months before the murders. If he had shown it to a therapist, a teacher, police, what would have happened? Maybe Erik would have gotten help. Maybe the abuse would have stopped. Or maybe Erik would have been furious at Andy for betraying his trust. Maybe nothing would have changed. What if Kitty had acted in 1977? This is the biggest what if. Diane told Kitty about Lyle's disclosure. Kitty dismissed it. If Kitty had believed Lyle, if she had confronted Jose, if she had left him, Jose and Kitty would be alive today. Lyle and Erik would have had different lives. Everything would be different. But Kitty didn't act. Why? Possible reasons. She didn't believe Lyle. Maybe she thought he misunderstood something innocent. She knew, but was in denial. Accepting it meant accepting that she married a monster. She knew, and was complicit. Some theorize Kitty enabled the abuse to keep Jose's attention off her. She knew and felt powerless. Maybe she wanted to stop it, but didn't know how. We'll never know. Kitty is dead. She can't explain. For 35 years, Andy Cano's letter was questioned. Skeptics said, there's no proof it was written in 1988. Andy could have fabricated it. But in 2023, something changed. The discovery: Andy's mother, who had kept all of Andy's belongings after his death, found the original envelope. It had been in a box in her attic for 20 years. She looked at it closely, and she noticed something: a faint postmark. December 1988. The significance? This proved the letter was written when Andy said it was before the murders. This meant Erik was telling someone about ongoing abuse 8 months before he and Lyle killed their parents. This corroborated the defense's entire theory. The legal impact. This letter became part of the 2023 habeas corpus petition. It was submitted as new evidence. Even though it existed before, the postmark verification was new. The defense argued the jury in 1996 didn't know the letter was definitively from 1988. This changes everything. George Gascon's response. In October 2024, when Gascon recommended resentencing, he cited Andy's letter as one of the key pieces of new evidence. This letter proves the abuse allegations predated the murders. That's significant. Diane and Andy's testimonies did something crucial. They moved the abuse allegations from he said, she said, to multiple people knew about this. Without the cousins, it would be Lyle and Erik's word against nothing. Jose and Kitty are dead. The prosecution could say, they're making this up. There's no evidence. With the cousins, the defense could say, Lyle told his cousin in 1977. Erik told his cousin for years and wrote about it in 1988. This isn't a story invented after arrest. This is a pattern documented by independent witnesses. Did it convince everyone? No. Half the jury in the first trial believed the cousins, half thought they were lying or mistaken. The second trial jury heard limited testimony about the cousins. The judge restricted it, but their testimony created reasonable doubt for many people. It's worth noting, not all family members supported Lyle and Erik. Brian Anderson, Kitty's nephew, he testified for the prosecution. He said he never saw any abuse. He said the family seemed normal. Milton Anderson, Kitty's brother, he didn't testify but publicly opposed the abuse claims. He said Kitty would never allow her sons to be hurt. Diane VanderMolen, Kitty's sister, Diane's mother, she testified for the defense. She said she believed Diane. She said Kitty had problems and might have been unable to protect her sons. The family was and remains deeply divided. Diane VanderMolen and Andy Cano both carried the burden of knowledge. They knew something terrible was happening. They knew before anyone died. And they both struggled with the same questions. Should I have done more? Could I have prevented this? Am I responsible? Diane's answer: I was 17. I told the adults. They dismissed it. I don't blame myself. Andy's answer: before he died, I should have told someone. If I had, maybe everything would be different. I'll never forgive myself. Two people, same knowledge, different outcomes. Diane found peace. Andy didn't. Conclusion: the witnesses who held the key, Lyle and Erik Menendez, spent years saying, we were abused. That's why we did it. The prosecution said, you're lying. There's no proof. But Diane and Andy said, actually there is. Because we knew. Long before the murders, we knew. Diane VanderMolen heard Lyle's disclosure at age 8, told Kitty, who dismissed it, testified 16 years later. Still believes the brothers today. Andy Cano, Erik's confidant for years, received the December 1988 letter, testified despite family pressure, died at 29, haunted by guilt. Their testimonies didn't save Lyle and Erik from conviction, but they did something else. They proved the abuse allegations weren't invented after arrest. They showed a pattern of disclosure, family silence, and institutional failure. They gave the brothers something no one else could: corroboration. And now, 35 years later, that corroboration matters more than ever, because the 2023 letter evidence, verified by Andy's postmark, is one of the main reasons the DA recommended resentencing. Andy didn't live to see it, but his testimony, his letter, his courage, it might be what finally sets them free. The cousins who knew the secret didn't prevent the tragedy, but they did tell the truth, and sometimes that's all a witness can do. In every family, there are secrets. In the Menendez family, two cousins knew the darkest one. Diane was 17 when Lyle told her. Andy was Erik's best friend for years. They both knew about the abuse before anyone died. They both testified. They both paid a price. Diane lost half her family. Andy lost his life. But they told the truth. And 35 years later, that truth might be the thing that finally brings justice. Not just for Jose and Kitty, but for two boys who said they had no other choice.